Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
The war broke out in my home country, Lebanon. I was 11 years old, and I saw a lot of bloodshed and inequality and poverty. You can't grow up in an environment like that and not be affected by it and not want to make a difference. I graduated from Yale University with a master's in ethics. I speak 4 languages. It has always been innate in me fighting for the underdog and trying to do whatever it is I can to make a difference in the world.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS extension 100 or visit yourrights.com.
للحياة أسرار نحاول معا فهمها. لكل واحد نظرته الخاصة تتشكل وفقا لخبراته، ولطالما كان للناجحين نظرتهم المميزة للحياة. في برنامج يور رايتس سنحاور المحامية جومانا كيروز التي تعتبر من أنجح المحامين وأكثرهم شهرة في الولايات المتحدة كل يوم ثلاثاء عن مواضيع اجتماعية وتحفيزية ومواضيع تطوير الذات، كما تهمنا آراءكم وخبراتكم. بإمكانكم التواصل معنا في هذه الحلقات الخاصة من برنامج يور رايتس كل يوم ثلاثاء من الساعة 1 وحتى 2 من بعد الظهر على الهواء مباشرة وعلى الرقم 313-769-6666 أو عن طريق الواتساب 313-327-7074. قد يحاول بعض المصابين في حوادث السيارات إدارة قضاياهم توفيرا لأتعاب المحامين، والآن مكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز بإمكانه المساعدة من خلال إشرافه على سير القضية في جزئها الأول المتعلق بتعويضات الراتب والخدمات المنزلية، وتقوم بإرشادك في كيفية إدارة ملفك مجانا، بينما سيتولى المكتب مهمة الدفاع عن قضيتك في جزئها الثاني المتعلق برفع دعوى عن عطل وضرر. للمزيد من المعلومات اتصلوا بمكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز والاستشارات مجانية 248-557-3645. برنامج يور رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز المختصة في قضايا حوادث السيارات مع نخبة من المحامين في اختصاصات عدة منها الطلاق والهجرة والإفلاس يأتيكم الآن على الهواء مباشرة. تحية طيبة لكم مستمعينا في كل مكان، وأهلا بكم في هذه الحلقة الجديدة من برنامج يور رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز. أرقام الهواتف في الاستوديو للمشاركة معنا في موضوع حلقة اليوم في المتعلق بقانون الأسرة وأيضا قضايا الطلاق وغيرها مع المحامية ماريا بانشينكو، وبإمكانكم المشاركة على الأرقام 313-769-6666 519-256-1023 دائما على الواتساب، والرقم هو 313-327-7074. مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز تقدم استشارات مجانية في القضايا التي يتعامل معها، منها قضايا الإصابات الشخصية من ضمنها حوادث السيارات، إصابات العمل، الأخطاء الطبية، قضايا الهجرة والتجنس، قضايا الإفلاس، الضمان الاجتماعي وقوانين العائلة. 248-557-3645. تحياتنا لكم. جومانا مساء الخير.
مساء الخير رامي،
مساء النور.
كيفك اليوم؟ يعطيك العافية.
الله يعافيك، الحمد لله. نسأل عنك إن شاء الله بخير.
كتر خير الله، كتر خير الله. مساء الخير لكل المستمعين ومساء الخير لضيفتنا لليوم المحامية ماريا بانشينكو اللي صار لها سنوات عديدة ضيفتنا أسبوعيا بقوانين الفاميلي لو والكريمنال لو. اليوم زعلانين ومبسوطين بذات الوقت لأنه رح تنضم لنا للمرة الأخيرة رح تنقل المحامية ماريا بانشينكو لولاية جورجيا مع زوجها اللي هو بالجيش بالميليتاري، ورح تمارس المحاماة بولاية جورجيا. فنحن اليوم رح نستضيفها للمرة الأخيرة، وبعد شوي بنحكي عن الفكرة اللي حضرتك طرحتها رامي كل نهار ثلاثاء ابتداء من الثلاثاء القادم. منرحب بإذن الله، منرحب بالمحامية ماريا بانشينكو. Good afternoon, Maria. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you, Joumana. How are you doing?
I am doing very good. I was letting the listeners know that today is bittersweet. It is bitter because it will be your last time joining us. It is sweet because we want the very best for you and for your family. And you've given us permission to share with the clients that you will be relocating with your family to Georgia. Your husband is in the military, and you and your family will be moving to Georgia, and you will be practicing law out of Georgia, and you will be practicing Georgia law. One of the benefits that the government gives the spouses of people in the military is that if the spouse is a lawyer, that lawyer does not have to go through the hoops that uh, others would have to go through by applying to the bar of that state, by writing in, or by taking a test and waiting and so forth. You can immediately pick up practicing under Georgia law the minute you relocate to Georgia. Am I correct?
Yes, they and thank you. Yeah, it is bittersweet. I'm gonna miss you and Rami on Tuesdays and all of the clients. But yes, we are moving to Georgia, and the basic premise is that what you said, they will allow me to practice because of the unique dynamic that military families have of always having to move all the time. So they don't expect those who are moving with their military spouse to retake the bar exam in every single state that they have to move every few years. So there's been some laws passed in most of the 50 states. There's a few that have not passed that, but there is pending legislation. But yeah, it's Georgia's one of the states. So I'm lucky enough to be able to continue my career. But I will be leaving Michigan, and like you said, it's very bittersweet.
Indeed. This has been a very big year for you, Maria, because can we also share the other wonderful? Well, so Maria has two boys, and now she has a girl. So she has two boys and a girl. Maria adopted a beautiful young little girl from India. And recently, about 3-4 months ago, had to travel with her husband to India to meet her daughter, to finish the adoption papers, and to bring her daughter back. Can you tell us a little bit about that? That is, you have a huge heart for doing that. You really do. Can you tell us, you've represented people in adoptions, by the way. I mean, I remember Genevieve, one of the first babies that you represented the adoptive family in getting baby Genevieve in downtown Wayne County to get adopted. So you've represented a lot of families who are seeking adoptions, and there you are, one of those adoptive families. Can you tell us a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I had a heart for adoption after I did my first adoption case, really soon after I started practicing law. And I just saw the joy that it brought the family. And I just started really developing a clientele base with adoption. And I started seeing more and more adoptions and the process. And I started speaking with my husband about, how I was developing this want to adopt, and he joined in that. And we decided to adopt internationally after considering all the options, knowing the laws here and that. And it was about a 2-year process to get to our daughter, and she's only 2 years old. So it pretty much started at birth. But the process for overseas is obviously very complex, bringing somebody overseas, as I'm sure Sam Safe could explain much better than me. But it's a lot of paperwork, and we were able to successfully complete the adoption. It was in November when we traveled, and we were in India about a month to complete everything. And it was a very scary time with the pandemic being at its peak. And we were given and granted special permission from the U.S. government to travel because our child was in a foreign country. So we were able to kind of go over and above the rules concerning international travel in order to complete that process and bring her home. But it did take about a month to get everything done, and she's home safe and she's doing very well, and she is the cutest thing, and we're having a blast with her. But yes, I've represented both adoptive families, step parents, grandparents, guardians, and birth mothers during the adoption process. So I really do feel that it is a beautiful wonderful thing. And those who can open their heart to adoption, it's been one of the best things that I've ever done in my life. And it's really brought just a completion. It's completed my family.
Maria, why did you go the international adoption way?
Well, I can tell you from a legal perspective, doing a lot of adoptions here in the state of Michigan. Now, I'm not a foster care worker, so I didn't do anything through the foster care program. However, I have represented families that were fighting the process of their children being adopted out by the foster care process. So I am a little familiar. And when I was going through my decision of how I'd like to bring my child into my family, I weighed out the options, and the laws here in Michigan for the different types of adoptions that you can complete. They are it is a very large risk, both financially and emotionally, to adopt. And I think that that's a big key in why a lot of people choose to go alternate routes when, adding to their family. But in the process of direct placement adoption, and that's, Joumana, which is what we did a lot together, me and you at the firm. The direct placement route is basically when you are matched with a birth mother, an expectant mother who is pregnant and considering placing her child with an adoptive family as an alternative to parenting. And that is no less expensive than an international adoption. It is just as expensive. And the laws here in Michigan are very strict when it comes to the birth mother's rights to change her mind. And you can go through the emotional attachment and development to both the mother and the Your Honor, listen to me, Joumana. You've become a judge suddenly. I'm used to saying sorry, Your Honor, when something goes wrong with my technology.
It's okay. You are on this phone all day long, in settlement and hearings. I get it.
Yes, it's just one of those like automatic responses, I guess. But yes, as I was saying, the direct placement route, when you're attached to the birth mother and you're attached to the unborn child, and you pay, a great sum of money for the services that are provided by all the professionals. And it's all done prior to your child's finalization of them being, legally your child. If the birth mother changes her mind, which is her absolute right to do so, and I do not mean for any of this to sound like it's the wrong thing. It is the law. But if she changes her mind, emotionally, the adoptive parents feel a great loss, of course, as if they had, lost a child or, had lost a pregnancy. It's a similar psychology. Reports have shown that it's a similar feelings of grief. And, the financial aspect is that there is not a return of any funding that you've provided through the process. So my husband and I decided to do the international adoption after considering this option and knowing the great risk. And although, yes, there are many children in the States and in the state of Michigan that need good homes, for us and our family, and for our circumstances, international adoption is run a little bit different, wherein the children that are placed for adoption prior to you being, what we say in the adoption community is matched, prior to being matched with a child, is already legally free for adoption. So there's not the risk of the birth parents changing their minds. So it kind of eliminated that emotional risk for us in some sense, and not so much in other senses, because there is still obviously a lot of hoops that you have to go through that could stop the process procedurally. But our decision was based in, protecting our heart basically from the devastation. And I've seen a lot of what we call disrupted adoptions over my career, where birth mothers, expectant mothers had changed their mind midway or right after the process, even sometimes after the child had been in the care and custody of the adoptive parents, and she was still within her window of time to change her mind. And they call it's kind of known as the change of heart law. And once that choice has been made, then the parents must turn the child back over to the mother. So that was our deciding factor. And like I said, any which way you go about your adoption, there's always risk involved. But we elected to go through international adoption and we were matched with our little girl in India.
Beautiful, Dalia. So Maria, how much does it normally cost on average for an adoptive family here in the States, or at least here in Michigan, to go through adoption?
Yeah, there's a lot of services that are involved because the laws are so strict to obviously meet with the criterion of making sure you're not buying or selling children. It can't, it's got to pass muster so we don't run to the realm of human trafficking. And so all of these laws and services are put into place to prevent that from happening. So, there are agencies that you can work with. There are attorneys that you can work with. But it all starts really at the beginning with getting your home study done. And that home study fee in Michigan can average from about $1,500 to $2,000. And depending upon the time frame that it takes you to actually adopt, you will be responsible per the laws to update that home study as time goes on, because it's only valid for a certain number of, it's only valid for a year. And if anything changes significantly in your life, you have to update it. And each one of those updates can cost you between $100 to $350. So, that in and of itself is an expense. If you elect to go with an agency, most agency fees are for, obviously the practice and procedure, the paperwork, the staff that's assisting you through the process, the court expenses. All in all, the average cost of a direct placement adoption here in Michigan is going to run somewhere between $20,000 to $35,000.
Whoa.
It's a lot of money.
$35,000.
That's the average. There are some that do not meet that, rule. There's some that are less expensive due to certain circumstances. Some fees are waived. Some people receive grants. Some people receive, funding, fundraisers, things of that nature. But for the most part, it's quite expensive, and the agency has to keep up with being licensed by the state and the state fees and all of the things that go into protecting the children and protecting the parents and, of course, the adoptive parents to make sure that all the laws are followed. It is quite an expensive thing. And, Joumana, there are a whole groups of people that are very against how expensive it is to adopt and the level of fees. And, a lot of people have reverted to working with private attorneys instead of agencies because of it's far less expensive. You're not paying for the agency's fees and their licensures and all the certifications that they must have. And attorneys are allowed to do private adoptions just the same as an agency. We can't skip the home study step, but we are able to do it for our rate, which is, we've talked about our rates before. I mean, sure. And average for a direct placement through private attorneys, it can cost probably anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000. But most of the money that you're spending in those situations are covering birth mom expenses, court fees, especially if you're going to be adopting from another state. If your expectant mother is here in Michigan versus and you're living, let's say, in the state of Texas, you have to pay some certain fees through the Interstate Compact Act that is required under the law. There's a lot to do. It is very complex, and it's definitely not something that you can do without an agency or an attorney. So, and that's all just for the protection of the children.
So very quickly before we leave the subject, why India? Did you request India or you were matched with India?
So no, we did sign into the India adoption program. We did a lot of research across the world. There have been a lot of shutdowns between the U.S. and different countries that no longer will adopt out to the U.S. or vice versa. So the options that are available, we did research. Some were cost prohibitive, upwards of $100,000. It was insane amounts. And then some of them were. They had very strict requirements. The country itself, you had to live and become a resident in some of these countries, some of them for a year before you could be matched with a child. So obviously with our circumstances being that we have children here, our home here, and of course our jobs, that was not available to us. So, we went through all the countries that we did qualify for. And ultimately what it came down to was orphan care, and knowing that we would be matched with a child and be separated from that child that we were developing, a deep-seated love for, knowing that they were going to be getting the best care that was available, considering the circumstances, was important to us to make sure that we were kind of eliminating that extra added stress. And the orphan care in India far surpassed the other countries based on all of the research that we had done. And we felt that a connection there as well with our friends and family, since we were going to become a multicultural family, to be able to provide her with, people she identifies with in her race and in her culture, so that she could be exposed to that. And we have a lot of Indian American friends. So we felt comfortable, most comfortable with India.
And Maria, you did state that some countries you cannot adopt from and vice versa. I'm thinking of Lebanon, I'm thinking of Iraq, I'm thinking of Syria, for example, Palestine. To your knowledge, can you adopt? Does the United States allow you to adopt from these countries, or you don't know?
So there are specific ways that, especially for relatives, to bring people over for this purpose. It's non-Hague participants. It is a much more complicated process. It is a much more stringent process, and most of the time you must have the citizenship of that country, either a dual citizenship or some kind of tie or family member. And from what I've seen, it's usually done through the immigration process and then ultimately finished here in the United States. But my understanding is that if it's not a Hague certified country, it's really got to be a relative situation. That's always been my understanding.
So it is doable from these countries, but the rules are different.
Yes, very different. And I don't know exactly all of them, but I know that I can say with the utmost degree of certainty that every country is going to have its own very specific set of rules.
We've spoken about adoption. Do you know enough to share with us about surrogacy for when a woman cannot carry a pregnancy and ask somebody else to carry that fetus, that embryo, turning into a fetus for her here in Michigan?
So surrogacy is been a long since big thing, since a lot of celebrities use surrogate mothers, and a lot of states do allow surrogacy, and they have laws that protect the parents that are hiring the surrogate, and Michigan is just not one of them. You can go through surrogacy. However, you are not protected in the state of Michigan. No contract will be honored. If the mother or the expectant mother, the pregnant woman, decides to keep the child, there's really nothing you can do. There is no contract for hire. If you pay this woman or this man and this woman to do this for you, nothing can be enforced. Nothing is protected. It is essentially just non-existent here. And
very risky because this may
absolutely.
be your embryo. This is your embryo. This is your egg. And the expectant mother may decide to keep the child.
Yes, and for the most part, my understanding is that the doctors here, knowing the law, that are fertility specialists in this, I don't think they do much of this transfer because of the fact that it could go very badly if somebody changes their mind, and there's no recourse. So I do believe that it's essentially just considered, a lot of people will use the word illegal, but it's not that it's illegal so much so as it's just not honored. It's not, there's no such law that will protect you from, there's no contract that will be enforced in these regards here.
But can someone here in Michigan perhaps contract with a surrogacy agency or a surrogate in Ohio, let's say, if these laws are different in Ohio and give protection?
I do believe that is something that people do. Yes, they contract out of California is a very major state that has done a lot of work in surrogacy law, and it's very highly protected. I believe that is something that you can do, and you do extend yourself under their jurisdiction. I do believe that there are procedural safeguards in place for that, and I do believe a lot of people from other states that don't have surrogacy are reaching out to agencies in other states for that purpose. Yes.
To your knowledge, can you pay for the surrogate other than payment of delivery, childbirth? Can you give the surrogate a financial remuneration outside of just reimbursement for the delivery process and the pregnancy?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but my understanding has always been from people that I've known to use surrogacy in different states, has been that going with an agency is the best bet because all of those kinds of fees are kind of built in. I do believe there are some concessions made for certain things that the mother may need while she is pregnant. I do believe there are some fees and things that are allowed to go to her for, like, getting to the doctors and such, to take care of herself. But I'm not 100% certain what those things might be if they are available. And my understanding has always been safest bet is to go with an agency that is very, very well known for what they do and have longstanding history and success rates.
Okay. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for sharing personal details with us. It's very, very much appreciated. Let's take a quick break, Maria. And when we return, we're going to talk about the increase in divorce rates lately and why.
قد يحاول بعض المصابين في حوادث السيارات إدارة قضاياهم توفيرا لأتعاب المحامين، والآن مكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز بإمكانه المساعدة من خلال إشرافه على سير القضية في جزئها الأول المتعلق بتعويضات الراتب والخدمات المنزلية، وتقوم بإرشادك في كيفية إدارة ملفك مجانا، بينما سيتولى المكتب مهمة الدفاع عن قضيتك في جزئها الثاني المتعلق برفع دعوى عن عطل وضرر. للمزيد من المعلومات اتصلوا بمكتب المحامية جومانا كيروز والاستشارات مجانية 248-557-3645. للحياة أسرار نحاول معا فهمها، لكل واحد نظرته الخاصة تتشكل وفقا لخبراته، ولطالما كان للناجحين نظرتهم المميزة للحياة. في برنامج الرايت سنحاور المحامية جومانا كيروز التي تعتبر من أنجح المحامين وأكثرهم شهرة في الولايات المتحدة كل يوم ثلاثاء عن مواضيع اجتماعية وتحفيزية ومواضيع تطوير الذات، كما تهمنا آراءكم وخبراتكم. بإمكانكم التواصل معنا في هذه الحلقات الخاصة من برنامج الرايت كل يوم ثلاثاء من الساعة 1 وحتى 2 من بعد الظهر على الهواء مباشرة وعلى الرقم 313-769-6666 أو عن طريق الواتساب 313-327-7074. Your Rights مع المحامية جومانا كيروز. عودة إلى برنامج Your Rights. أرقام الهاتف في الاستوديو 313-769-6666 519-256-1023. جومانا الرجالي.
شكرا جزيلا رامي منذكر المستمعين انه نحن اليوم الثلاثاء هو اخر ثلاثاء بنستضيف المحاميه ماريا بانشينكو. ما بقى رح نتقبل ملفات بالمكتب family law, criminal law, driver's license restorations, expungements إلى آخره، لأنه المحامية ماريا رح تنتقل إلى ولاية جورجيا ورح تمارس المحاماة في ولاية جورجيا. مؤخرا عم بيصير في ارتفاع من جديد بعدد الطلاق، مع انه اجمالا كل المحاميين تبع الطلاق بيقولوا انه summer month are dry month، يعني دائما محاميين الطلاق بياخدوا بعين الاعتبار انه شهور الصيفيه عاده بخف البزنس عندهم، لانه في كتير اهالي، في كتير كابلز ما بيحبوا يقدموا على الطلاق او الانفصال، والولاد هن بالبيت عندهم عطلة من المدرسة. سو كقاعدة عامة during the summer أو الميجر holidays مثل كريسماس ونيو ييرز بيتحاشوا الكابلز إنه يقدموا طلاقهم، لأنه الولاد بيكونوا موجودين وبيحسوا بوطأ هيدا أثار هيدا القرار أكتر. اللي عم نشوفه according للمحامية ماريا بانشينكو مختلف. نحن هلأ عبواب السمر، وإنما عم نلاقي إنه في ارتفاع كبير بعدد الأشخاص اللي عم بيقدموا طلاقهم. رح نسألها برأيها ليش. Attorney Maria Panchenko, every family law knows that the summer months are normally dry months, and they make allowances for that financially, because a lot of parents don't want to get divorced when their children are off from school and at home. Same for around the holidays. That's why the first Monday of every January is called Divorce Day, because a lot of couples who have issues think about it over the holidays, but they don't do anything until the kids return to school and until the holidays are over. They don't want to upset the family any more than they need to. You're telling me that we are having a completely different summer. There is an increase in divorce rates lately. About that, please.
Yes. So, as you said, usually the summer months are very slow, just finishing up what had transpired from what is known as Divorce Day in January. And, we do have the residual cases, finishing up during the summer, but new divorces usually come back starting in September when kids go back to school. That's usually where things pick up a little bit more. However, for some reason this year, it's kind of been a little bit of a flip, but everything has kind of been changed in the last year with the pandemic being what it was. Divorce Day wasn't as wild and crazy as it usually is. And it seems that it's kind of had its delay and is starting to pick back up here at the beginning of the summer. We've had a very large increase in calls, a very large increase in cases starting up, new divorces in Michigan. And the word is that is what all family law attorneys are experiencing throughout the state. And I believe that there's just so many things that are contributing to that. Obviously, the pandemic being a contributing factor to a lot of changes that have taken place over the last year. But yeah, it's very unusual, Joumana. It's very unusual to have this many people beginning a divorce process at the summer months. It's usually, like you said, a slow season, dry months that for like 3 months, no new divorces, not no, but very few, comparatively speaking, throughout the rest of the year.
Why do you think it's different?
Well, with the pandemic, a lot of people, definitely financially, there's been a lot of financial stress on families throughout this pandemic. In the beginning, of course, people being laid off of work, and people trying to fight with unemployment to get unemployment. But once all that started to kind of rectify itself and people started receiving the COVID-19 relief between the stimulus payments and the rent relief and the mortgage relief, all of the funding that came through for different programs, especially with unemployment, extending its time frames, going back some I believe it was 13 months for some people. And then adding on top of that, the additional payments under the CARES Act for unemployment. I believe that people started feeling a little bit of weight of relief from their financial distress. And perhaps since that all kind of transpired right around the new year, when usually divorces are at their highest filing rate, I think that some people just felt that financial stress load off and kind of held off, and ultimately were unable to either sustain whatever relief they had, or sustain the attempts to rectify whatever problems they had in their marriage. So they ultimately did have to go ahead and file for divorce. It just came later this year. And I think that that's probably the biggest reason. I'm sure there's a lot of changes going on in the world. The political climate is different now. And I know that that has put a lot of stress on families, between all the different things that are circling around in that atmosphere. And I think that the big reason always was that children were going to be home. You know, they were going to be home for the summer. Same thing with the holidays, as you mentioned. And they don't like to upset the children, go through and ruin their summer going through a divorce, since they're going to be home all the time and not have school as an escape for their day, you know, not have to be stuck inside with their parents going through this process. But that's changed as well, right? Because all of these kids have been home doing virtual learning for the last year, for the most part, and they're just now starting to allow kids to go back. In some districts, some not. Some are only part-time going, and some children are electing to stay virtual because of their personal preference concerning the COVID-19 virus and their exposure. So I think that the parents, originally thinking, oh, well, they're going to be home, we should wait, have kind of abandoned that theory, considering that they've been home anyway. And it's really, you know, not a contributing factor to their decision making on whether or not to start the process anymore.
One of the questions you are getting asked when people are calling contemplating divorce lately is what happens to the mortgage? Because during the pandemic, a number of people who could not pay their mortgage received mortgage relief, which only meant that you don't have to pay the mortgage for now, but wait, we're adding it to the end of your mortgage. So now, if people are separating, you're getting that question, you know, what happens to the mortgage debt here?
Yeah, and that's a big question because of, I think it's got, and I don't do mortgages, but my understanding has been that people were given a grace period, and there were certain terms and conditions with the mortgage companies to pay that money back, some interest rates and things of that nature. And people have hopefully been paying it down as they've gotten their unemployment back on track or gotten back to work. But I do believe that the majority of people who are calling with this question have been unable to satisfy and are swimming underwater with their mortgage because of how far behind they've gotten over the last year with that program. And the concern is then, does this change anything for the divorce? You know, are we responsible together? You know, maybe there's been some instances, for example, a person has called and asked, you know, I bought the home before we got married. We added her name to the mortgage on a refinance, and then the COVID-19 program came into effect. Is she still responsible if we get divorced for this debt, if we go ahead with the divorce and then the home ultimately gets sold? And the answer is yes. The law is not going to change in the divorce court or in the family division of Michigan circuit courts concerning your divorces. Whatever you've acquired, both debts and assets, are going to be equally split, and your spouse is going to be equally responsible for any debts, including any debts you've occurred under this program. The next caller had a little bit of a different but similar question that, here is our house that was bought during the marriage, but my name is the only name that's on the mortgage because we went with my credit score at the time being better. So the debt relief program is all under my name. Am I the only one responsible? And of course, as far as the divorce court is concerned, no, the spouse is going to be responsible for this debt as well. Now, the mortgage company is going to be obviously pursuing this gentleman and not his spouse because his name's on the paperwork, but there will be relief, as always, in the divorce court should the ultimate end to that divorce state that she is responsible for payments and bringing that current. So nothing changes in divorce court due to the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the different relief programs that ultimately have to be paid back. That money that you owe, if acquired during your marriage, is a debt that is considered a part of the marital estate and needs to be equally divided or equitably divided, whichever.
Okay. Speaking of courts, any changes in Macomb, Wayne, Oakland as far as courts reopening physically?
They're starting. It's starting. Some of the district courts are allowing more and more in-person hearings. Prior to recent month or so, it was all only if it was demanded that the hearing be in person that they would allow for that. And each court room had its own scheduled date to allow for in-person demanded hearings. But now we're seeing some hearings being sent out, notices to appear to the attorneys that say that it is live and in person, and they're starting to open. It's definitely not to a point yet where they're pooling jurors in a room so that we could select for jury trials, but we are inching closer and closer to getting those cases that have been waiting for their jury trial to, actually happen.
Okay. In addition to the increase in divorce rates lately, there is another frenzy going on, and we've talked about that, I believe, last time and a couple of times before with the new expungement laws. You said there's been like an expungement frenzy out there. A lot of people are anxious. They want to take advantage of the new expungement laws. Tell us more about that and give us examples of, think of some of the people who called you, who have retained you, who are so anxious to take advantage of the new laws. Why are they so anxious?
Well, for all these years, they never ever thought it possible for them to expunge their records because they had never met the requirements under the law. They had more than one felony, or they had too many misdemeanors on their record, so they never qualified. So when the law changed, it suddenly became possible. And it became very exciting, of course, that, they would have a chance to clear their name and start over in their personal and professional lives. And I think that as soon as that law passed, it got so much attention because it was such a huge change and so unheard of, groundbreaking for all 50 states, that I think the people that suddenly qualified became so excited that they were like, let's do this immediately. I want to make sure that I can clear my name. Whereas some of the people that, knew that they were just waiting their time, only had one criminal offense on their record, and they always anticipated they would expunge it. It was always a part of their plan. They weren't so apt to jump on the bandwagon because they know that it was always possible for them. Those that never thought it possible got very excited, and they should be. They should be. This is a very exciting time and creates a lot of second chances for a lot of people.
You did say someone, had been waiting 30 years and never thought that he'd have his records expunged. give us an example of somebody else who was very anxious that has to do with affordable housing.
Yeah, so we currently have a client now that was very excited about the new law. This new law does allow for you to expunge multiple offenses at the same time, even if they are from different jurisdictions or different courts. I mean, you have a conviction out of one court and another conviction out of a different court. They are allowing you to expunge them all. So he was very excited. He'd been 30 years, never thought it possible, and had to come up with a way to sustain his, family, and, became a self-made businessman. And when this law passed, he had multiple homes that he had invested in and was getting secured for HUD housing, Section 8 housing, as a landlord under his company. And there is a government contract that he is now going to be qualified for to start doing affordable housing on a larger scale in apartment complexes and over in different states. And so this government contract means the world to him and for his business. And once his expungement goes through, he's actually going to be able to advance his business. And he should be very proud of what he's accomplished this far with his record being what it is. He took, lemons and made lemonade, but he now is going to be able to really enjoy advancing his business, which was kind of stuck where it was at, not that it was in a bad place, just that it was, he had kind of reached the peak of it because of what was holding him back on his record. And now he has opportunities that he would not otherwise have had. And he waited 30 years. It's been 30 years since he's ever been in trouble, with no hope that it would ever be lived down. And suddenly this new bill has really created hope in a lot of people. And I think it's a great step forward for people, especially like this, that really deserve the second chance and the opportunity.
You've also talked about people who now can get gun licenses.
Yep. Yes, absolutely. Those, Michigan is big hunting. November comes around and everybody gets excited. But those who have had, 30 years ago, one bad night, have never been able to go hunting or protect themselves if they find themselves in a need to carry a pistol or something along those lines, as a dangerous work environment, or work or live in a dangerous area. That they feel they wanted to protect themselves. They never could if they wanted to advance those rights under, the Second Amendment. And suddenly it's become possible if they can qualify for this expungement. So a lot of people are definitely rushing to the front of the line in hopes that their expungement will be heard prior to November when open season starts.
And you tell that you're pleasantly surprised that the courts are not running behind on this. You normally request a hearing and it takes you about 3 months. And now, under the new laws, you're requesting hearings and it's taking only 3 months.
Yes, and I think we talked about that when we were expecting on the show before, when I was expecting this law to come out. It hadn't yet come out, and I had said, I believe I'm eating my words now, because I think I had said that this is going to take months and
Sure.
months and to be so backed up. But if they are really keeping up with it and they are making sure that everybody's getting their day in court, and the advantage of being able to seek their expungement now, they waited long enough. I think that the court recognizes that, and they're not behind, and they're doing it just like they always have. It takes 3 months to get a hearing, and that's what all of the ones we've filed so far have been, 3 months, right on the dot.
And let's not also forget that one of the main advantages to having your criminal record expunged is becoming attractive to potential employers.
Yes, absolutely. A lot like the gentleman we were just discussing, he had to make it on his own, and he did, and that's great. But some people that, might not have the ability to self-start, or they don't have that opportunity to them, they're suddenly faced with a difference in what's going to happen for their careers. They can all of a sudden get a job, a W-2 wage earning job that they would not otherwise ever been able to have, and provide for their family and themselves. And, potentially move on to bigger things like getting a house, things that they never thought were possible that have waited, like him, 30 years.
And now there are a lot of employers hiring. So this is a good opportune time for somebody to get their record cleaned and become a good candidate for some of these jobs, since so many people are hiring. You see the hiring sign everywhere, right?
Yes, it's everywhere. Everyone's hiring, and a lot of really good jobs offering really great incentives and programs and benefits and things that they would not have ever had the opportunity to take advantage of. Some people that have never had the ability to have employer health insurance, because they just didn't qualify for these types of jobs, their lives are going to change. And it's, I think that's why they affectionately named it the Clean Slate Bill. So.
Clean slate. Yes, it's a new beginning. It's a new start. Maria, we are down to the last 5 minutes. We cannot thank you enough for your service over the past several years, for the education that you have given our listeners and our clients, the services you have rendered, the free services you have done so many times. You have taken so many cases pro bono, enough cases that I knew about pro bono that you did not really have to. We cannot thank you enough. We wish you the very best in the next chapter of your life. We remain very grateful to you. All of your shows, the greatest majority of your shows are on YouTube. People can listen to them again. We're very, very grateful to you.
Thank you so much, Joumana. Thank you for the opportunity. And thank you, Rami, for always having me on Tuesdays. And we'll miss you guys.
Thank you, Maria.
Maria. And with the last 5 minutes, Rami had an idea as he and I were talking about what to talk about coming next Tuesday and every Tuesday. So Rami had what I believe to be a beautiful idea about, what to talk about. So I'm going to leave the floor to Rami now, who's going to tell us what he has in mind for Tuesday shows. Go ahead, Rami.
Sure. Thank you, جومانا. أكيد نشكر ماريا على جهودها وعلى المعلومات القيمة اللي قدمتها خلال الفترة الماضية، خلال السنوات الماضية. جومانا، أكيد احنا سعداء إنه بالبداية قنعناكي إنه تغيرين يعني نعملي شفت بالمواضيع اللي راح تطرحيها بالبرنامج. شوي راح ناخذ بريك من المجال القانوني وراح ناخذ يعني جولة في مواضيع أخرى، مواضيع متعلقة بالجانب الإنساني وأيضا بالجانب الاجتماعي وحتى يمكن شوية الجانب النفسي، لأنه مثل ما وضحنا بالبرومو أنه كل إنسان عنده وجهة نظر معينة، وأكيد لما تكون وجهة النظر متعلقة بالحياة صادرة من أشخاص ناجحين في المجتمع، أكيد لازم ننتبه لها ودائما تكون كدروس لنا. فأنت من الأشخاص الناجحين جومانا، وأكيد لك دور مهم في الجالية وعلى صعيد الولايات المتحدة بشكل عام. فراح يكون كل حلقة أو كل ثلاثة حلقة خاصة متعلقة بهذه الجوانب، يعني موضوع النجاح مثلا، موضوع الفشل في حياة الإنسان، موضوع تحقيق الأهداف، ومواضيع كثيرة أخرى راح تعطينا وجهة نظرك فيها، وأيضا يمكن بعض الخبرات اللي مرت عليك في إطار مسيرتك الطويلة في مجال عملك. فأكيد احنا نتطلع إن شاء الله في الأسبوع المقبل، وأيضا الخطوط راح تكون مفتوحة أمام مستمعينا حتى أيضا يعطوا أفكارهم ومداخلاتهم بهذه المواضيع.
نعم، نحن رح نكون كمان متكلين على المتصلين يتفاعلوا مع اللي عم نتكلم عنه، لأنه بالنهاية هي وجهة نظري بناء على خبرتي ووجهة نظرك، بس في وجهات نظر عديدة وبنتمنى لو العالم بتشارك كمان بهذا البرنامج.
على فكرة أنت جمانة دائما تقرين أيضا بهذه المجالات، صح؟ عندك كثير اطلاع وعندك كثير، يعني رح تعطينا من مصادر كثيرة معلومات تكون كثير قيمة.
نعم، بقرأ كتير وبتسمع على كتير فيديوز وفيلوسوفرز وثينكرز على السوشيال ميديا، مش على السوشيال ميديا، بعتذر، على اليوتيوب. يمكن يوتيوب يعتبر سوشيال ميديا، على اليوتيوب وعلى الانترنت إلى آخره. وبحب دايما حط مذكرة، يعني وقت اللي بسمع الشغلة إذا بتأثر فيي بكتبها، خاف إنه أنسيها، وصدقني أغلبية الأوقات بنسيها. فوقت اللي برددها أكتر من مرة بتنتقل لذاكرتي وبتصير جزء من تفكيري وجزء من نظرتي. بإذن الله منشارك بعضنا البعض بهالمواضيع بالوزدم اللي تعلمناها وكل هالاشياء.
إن
وان
شاء
شاء
الله.
الله برنامج ناجح كل نهار 3، بس بعيد كتير عن القانون. نعم.
إن شاء الله خير. شكرا جمانة مرة أخرى، وعلى أمل نلتقيك بكرة في حلقة خاصة عن حوادث السيارات.
بإذن الله. شكرا جزيلا. شكرا ماريا. شكرا للمستمعين.
شكرا جزيلا، ولكم أكيد مستمعينا جزيل الشكر. تحية طيبة وإلى اللقاء.